Welcome to this presentation on Pokebots. My name is Torbjörn Lofterud, and the first thing I should say is that I'm not a poker player, so I don't play poker myself, and I'm not into math, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm more of an engineer. And the reason I started with programming Pokebots was that I saw a lot of people playing poker online, and they were not really smart people. So I saw people grinding day after day after day, playing poker online, and they were actually making money from it. So I figured, you know, as your typical Unix guy, I figured like this is a mundane and boring task. I'll write the shell script to like beat you in poker. Turns out that shell script is not a really good language for that, and apparently it's a lot more difficult than you would believe. So I'm holding this presentation because I failed. So I really honestly tried to make a poker playing program, and well, my get-rich-quick scheme didn't work as expected. So I went back to my day job, so to speak. But I'm hoping that by holding this presentation, I might inspire some of you to actually go out there and write like seriously good poker playing software. And if you can do that, I'm sure you can use it online, and I'm quite sure that you can use it to make money. And there are rumors on the internet about people actually making like huge amounts of money of this, and I'm sure it can be done. Even though I failed, that's probably because I'm lacking like the mathematicians, the mathematics behind it, and perhaps some of the programming skills to actually do it right. So if I would do it again, I might succeed, but I spent a lot of time trying to do this right, and I failed, so I kind of gave up on it. So I'm really hoping that someone out here can actually do it right. So Pokebots are a really interesting subject, and I believe a lot of you are actually doing sorry. So the first thing we're going to talk about is it legal? So is it legal to write poker playing software? Well, the first thing is it legal for you to play poker online? So if it's legal in your country to play poker, I'm fairly convinced that it's legal to play software-assisted poker, and if it's legal to play software-assisted poker, well, we were kind of into the bots anyway. So there might be countries where it's illegal to have assistance or mechanical assistance in gaming. As far as I know, none of the European countries have that. Perhaps the UK, they have a slightly different legal system. But in most cases, if it's legal for you to play poker, it's legal for your computer to play poker. And in many places, though, it's not legal for you to play poker online. So that might be, and there might be tax regulations and stuff like that that you might want to look into. But in most cases, it's fairly legal. Though it's probably against the service level agreement or the terms of use for the poker site. So many poker sites has like, it's not allowed to use any kind of software assistance except for, and they have like a short list of software that you can use. And if you use any other kind of assistance software, that's against the service rules or the house rules or your terms of use for the service. So you might want to be a little bit sneaky about it, because if they actually find out that you're using a poker bot, they are probably going to kick you out and keep the money you've invested. So that might be an issue, especially on the larger poker networks. As far as I know, there are no poker sites that explicitly allow you to run bots. But there are poker sites that allow you to use some kind of assistance software. So, Texas Hold'em Poker. Texas Hold'em Poker is the most popular poker game on the internet. It was introduced, according to Wikipedia, somewhere in the 60s or 70s in Las Vegas, but it didn't really get popular until the beginning of 2000, when it was like a huge game in sports television. So they would like, I'm sure you've seen it on TV, like poker, World Poker Tour or whatever it is. when it started showing on TV, it became a really popular game. And somewhere around the same time, there were like poker sites on the internet showing these games, and you could like follow the game on TV, and there were like lots of commercials for like poker sites on the internet, and you could go online and play poker online and so forth. The game is fairly simple to play. It's simple to learn, and it's fairly simple to play, but it has huge depth when it comes to strategy, knowledge, and psychology. So I would say most people can enjoy the game as long as the stakes are right. I mean, if you're playing for pennies, it's fun. When you're playing for like real money, it's not all that fun, especially when you're losing. And most people, to be honest with you, are losing because it's a zero-sum game. Everybody's gain. Whenever someone gains something, there's someone who loses. And the house is also taking a little bit out of the pot. So most players are losers, unfortunately. The game is played with up to 10 people. Each person gets 2 cards, which is called the pocket cards or hold cards. And then there's 3 community cards on the table. And afterwards, they add 2 more cards. And the idea behind the game is that you have your 2 pocket cards, and you try to combine those with the community cards on the table until you get a hand that is as good as possible. And everybody around the table gets a chance to use these 3 community cards together. The players can only affect the game. You can never change your cards. So once you have your cards, you can only hold them or fold them. So the only way to affect the game is by your actions, that is, by keeping your cards or folding them, and by your betting strategies, or if you stay in the game or not. If you play the game at a casino, there are more psychology involved. I mean, how you dress, how you behave, you have like tells and things like that. If you've seen the movie Rounders, it's all about how they behave around the table. When you play poker online, there's nothing like that. I mean, everything is reduced to pure poker. You can do your actions or you don't do your actions. That's the only kind of interaction that you have with other players. In some cases, there's a chat window where you can chat with other players. But if you have a player that's played like 10 tables at a time, he's not going to be active in the chat. There's no information to be gathered from how the other players dress or behave or where they are. Some people say that you can induce some small pieces of information from how long it takes for people to react. My feeling is that that is wrong. If someone playing at 10 tables at a time, the time it takes for them to react is not going to correspond very well to what hand they're having. The betting is divided into 5 different levels. First, when you get your 2 hold cards, there is 1 round of betting. Then you have the community cards, 3 of them, and you have another round of betting. Then you have what is called a turn, which is the 4th card on the table. You have another round of betting, and then the river, and you have another round of betting. And those are left in the game go to showdown, where you actually show your cards, and the winner takes the pot. Fairly simple. There's a few different actions you can do. You can fold your cards. That is, you leave the game. You can bet. That is, you bet a certain amount of money that this is that you're going to win. You can call. That is, that you're willing to insert as much money as the next player. You can raise. That is, you insert more money and force everybody else to either call or fold. There are a few different versions of the game that you can play online. You have no limit, you have fixed limit, you have heads up and tournament. These are just a few words that you're going to run into. No limit is that there's no limit to the amount of money that you can bring to the table and that you can use to play with. In fixed limit games, there's a cap on how much money you can bet at each point in the game. Heads up is like just 2 players, and a tournament is when you have this like stage where everybody plays for elimination, and you have like multiple players playing in the same tournament, and only the one who's left at the end actually receives any money. I think it was in the beginning of 2000 that poker sites showed up, and I think it was like a synergy between the TV shows and the online poker room and the casinos in Las Vegas. People saw poker on TV, and they heard about people playing poker online, making a lot of money, and they even saw people who had played online, playing for real in Las Vegas, making lots and lots of money. And there are tournaments online where you can play for a seat at like the World Cup in poker in Las Vegas. So you can like enter, or I mean, there's only like a few people who do this, but you can enter like with basically zero money and then have a seat in Las Vegas and make like millions. So of course these people are severely rare for obvious reasons. But the online poker boom seriously took hold in like 2002, 2003 perhaps. And I started my project, or I should say we, because there were numerous people involved in this project. We started this in, I believe, 2004. And that was like, I wouldn't say the height, but the height of the poker boom, or the online poker boom, was somewhere around there, like 2005 to 2007, which is where, during this period, that I actually tried to do this. Sorry. This presentation is in two parts. The first part is about poker client interaction. That is, how do you interact with an online poker site. And the second part is about poker playing software. How do you actually write software that plays poker? When you read on the internet on poker playing bots, a lot of it focuses on the poker client integration. How do you actually make your software know which hole cards you have, and what the game state is, and when it actually has to do actions? How do you make the mouse click on the right button and stuff? From my experience, that is the easy part. I mean, like, if you can't get over that threshold, you're never going to get anywhere. So that's the easy part. Making your software play like seriously good poker, that's the hard part. So we start out with the client integration, and there's like a few different ways you can do integration with the poker client. The easiest and most commonly used is screen scraping, and then we have DLL injection and network intercept. So we're going to start to talk about screen scraping, because that's the most popularized version of it. And from my perspective, it should be the last resort. I mean, if you can't come up with any other version, use screen scraping. But otherwise, I would prefer some of the other methods, like DLL injection, I think is the best one, or network analysis, which was the one we choose. And I'm going to talk about the pros and cons on each one of them. Sorry. Thank you very much. So, screen scraping. You start up your PokerBot. Sorry. You start up your poker client. You log in. You sit down at the table, and then your software is going to do a screen capture and try to figure out what community cards you have, what your hole cards are, how many players are in the game, and where in the game you are. And of course, you can do that with image recognition and OCR and stuff like that, but it's going to be highly dependent on what the game looks like at the current set. Like if you join two tables, for instance, they're going to move the tables around. If they theme the client somehow, like they have the Christmas theme or something like that, it's going to mess up your image recognition. So it's seriously difficult to use this technique, even though it's the entry-level technique. I mean, it's the easiest one to actually get going with. You also have the problem of actually making some kind of action. So you're going to have to move the mouse cursor around and like click on the right button, or like the bet button or the fold button and stuff like that. And you're going to have to find where those buttons are. I think some poker clients actually have like keyboard interaction, so you can like use like keyboard shortcuts. So you might be able to inject keyboard entries into the keyboard buffer to do these actions. There's also the problem with spyware in the actual poker client. So they're actually trying to monitor what is running on your computer in order to like catch up on these kind of things. So you probably want to do this in some kind of like VMware and perhaps use VNC or terminal services to like do the image capture and stuff offline. And you want to make sure that if they actually take a screenshot of your desktop, that it's clean. They can't see like your poker bot window next to it. And if they check your file system, it shouldn't be full with like pokerbot.exe and stuff like that. So just keep it clean and use like VMware or something like that. The second option is use like DLL injection. And in Windows, you can attach to binary and insert your own code into it. And using that, you can modify the behavior of the poker client. So using that, you can like read the entire memory and memory states and stuff like that. And you can use that to like figure out what the game state is, how many players there are, how to actually do actions. You can like invoke the button for the action you want to do. And I think that's the best method available today. It's also probably resistant against theming. And if you do it correctly against like some of the major brands, you can. So there's companies that make poker playing software. So they make a client and a server. And then gaming sites buy that and theme it. So if you do it right, you can probably use it on multiple sites. And it's probably easier to hide. So it does require Windows programming. And since I'm like a Unix and networking dude, I looked at this stuff and like, whoa, that sounds strange. So I went with network traffic analysis. It's probably not the best choice if you actually know how to like do Windows programming. But what we did was that we did a man in the middle on the SSL connection from the poker client to the poker server. So you always have to install a poker client. That's like level A. You download the client and you install it. And then you just look at the network traffic and you see that it's actually connecting to somewhere. And then you just reroute that. And these guys who wrote this software didn't check the server certificate. Boom, suckers. Seriously stupid. Anyhow, it turns out the network traffic for this specific software that we were after, and the software that we were after were used by multiple sites and then branded. So we could reuse the technology. Turns out that the traffic is XML-based with some kind of binary blobs in it. I never bothered with the binary blobs. So the XML data contained all of the game state and enough of the game state to figure out what my hole cards, how many players were at the table, table numbers. Some things that it didn't contain was the available actions for me. So when it's my turn to make an action, let's say there are like 4 people left at the table. The first guy bets $1, the second guy gets to call $1, then it's my turn, and I have to know which action to take. The server doesn't tell me what action to take. In most clients, you get like 3 buttons or 2 buttons for the available options. The problem I had was that I had to know what the proper action to do was. And in the beginning, my bot made the wrong decisions. So it like checked when I should have like folded or called. So the next guy, he has to call. So the game continues, but the game is like seriously messed up. And the reason for that is that they did client-side validation of my actions. So I can like enter a game where the limit is like $2. So the first guy bets $2, the second guy calls $2, and I raise him 1,000. That's like seriously broken. I'm quite sure there is somehow you can make money from that. But since that wasn't my end game, I want to make money in the long run. So I struggled in the beginning with that, like making the game state right and not like tipping over the entire system. But I think from the perspective of how to actually integrate with the poker client, I think DLL injection is the best choice, so to speak. Right. On the DLL injection part, I should also say that in many cases there's a log file or like a log window where you can actually like see the entire game play out. So it says like user Stefan calls 20 or user Eric raises 5 or whatever. So you can like read that instead of like do screen scraping and stuff like that. So client integration. As I said, if you cannot manage to get over that hurdle, you're not going to make it at all. So that's the easy part. So like, do the smart thing, use something simple, use DLL injection, go for a specific target, make sure that target is available on multiple sites, so when you get kicked out of one site, you can just move to another one. Do the integration right so that you feel that this is stable and robust and doesn't like do stuff seriously wrong, as in my case. So the next part of this presentation is about how do you actually make software that plays poker. And I would like to add poker well, but since I never managed to do that, I can't really tell you how to do that. But I can tell you how to make software that actually plays poker, though. The first thing I have to do is to give some credit. And the University of Alberta, I believe it's in Canada, has done some fantastic research on this topic. They have something called a Computer Poker's Research Group or something like that. I have their name written down. And they've been doing research on this subject for like many years. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not a scientist, I'm an engineer. So I don't write theses on these subjects and I don't know the math. These guys do. I mean, they actually know what they're doing, which is kind of cool. And they have released a lot of papers on the subject. So if you're the least bit interested in this subject, go read their papers. And when I looked at their work in like 2005, they had published a few papers. And while doing research for this presentation, I checked them out again. And they have actually released 2 or 3 more papers on the subject. So yeah, they are seriously good. The first poker bot that they made was called Loki, and then they released Pokey, and then they have something called Psi-Opt, and there's numerous more, and they implement different kind of technologies for how to solve the poker playing problem. They actually also have a piece of software that is called the Pokey Poker Academy that you can buy, and it's like a virtual room on your computer where you can play their bots to like train yourself to play poker well. So it's like really cool because they have an API, so you can make your own poker bot play against their poker bots on your own computer, and it's not very expensive at all. I like it a lot. I bought it myself and I like it. Check it out. Seriously, it is really good. So, game theory. What is game theory? Games are seriously good programming challenges. I mean, people address everything from like chess to Tetris to Super Mario Bros, Go, what have you. I mean, all kind of games. We have computer playing games. The major difference between, for instance, chess and poker is that poker is an imperfect information game. We do not have all the information about the current game state. So the only thing I know is the 2 cards that I hold that are secret to me, the 3 community cards, or 4 or 5 community cards, the number of players in the game, and their actions. So I have to induce all of the information about how to play the game from their actions. I do not know what. I mean, it's like playing chess with fog of war enabled. I mean, it's going to be seriously difficult. And in fact, the fact that the cards are shuffled means that it's like playing chess with random pieces. So you're playing chess with random pieces with fog of war enabled, so you actually don't know where your opponents are and what pieces you have. So it's like seriously difficult from that perspective. It's also much more about psychology, because your actions is going to be interpreted by your opponent. So your opponent is going to try to induce information from what you do. So you can influence his actions by your actions. And that makes the game state very, very, very large. The game is normally played with like 52 cards, no jokers and stuff like that. And the size of the game tree is like seriously, seriously large. So there are numerous different ways that we can address the problem of Pokébots, or poker playing software. The first one is rules. So we can have specific rules that if you have these cards, play this way. And if you get this chance of winning, use this strategy. So this is what we normally call an expert system. So it's basically just a database of possible game states and what to do at that point. From the perspective of a programmer, this is like boring stuff. I mean, you can get this from like any book. Any decent poker book is going to have like tables for what to do at different levels. This is also where you use pot odds and implied pot odds and stuff like that. So you use the cost of staying in the game compared to the hand you're holding. So if the pot is $100 and it's going to cost you $1 to enter the game, the pot odds is 1 to 100. And if the hand you're holding with your 2 cards has a greater chance than 1 in 100 of winning, the pot odds are in favor of staying in the game. So you chip in $1 and continue playing. And what you do is you add all of these rules to your expert system, that this hand has this chance of winning. Perhaps it can even calculate it. There's like fairly good odds calculators out there that you can use. And you compare that to the pot odds, and you decide which action to do. This is also where you use like implied pot odds and reverse implied pot odds and stuff like that. So from my perspective, I didn't go. I tried it out first, but it didn't really work out as I expected. So I decided to like extend my expert system. And one of the things we tried was learning from a pro, that like we took all of these log files from a guy who's like seriously addicted to poker, and he played like thousands and thousands and thousands of hands, and he actually made a living from it. I mean, he wasn't like really wealthy or anything, but he earned the money he needed from it. So we decided to try to reduce all of those log files into something that we could parse and store, and either train a Bayesian network on it, or train a neural network from it, or try to build rules from it. It didn't really work out either. I think it's a technology that might work. I actually never got it to work because I think part of it was storing all of that information is seriously difficult. Then we have the interesting part about optimal strategy. Optimal strategy is a strategy for a game that guarantees either a win or a tie. Sorry. From the perspective of game theory, depending on how complex the game is, you can calculate all of the possible scenarios. And what you do is you build this huge game tree, and you find a favorable outcome, I win lots of money. And then work your way back from there and figure out what's the optimal strategy to take from here. And for smaller games, that's fairly simple. The example I found was tic-tac-toe. This is from XKCD. It's an optimal solution for playing tic-tac-toe. So if you play this strategy, you will either win or tie. If both players play this strategy, they will tie. But if your opponent makes a mistake, you will win. So I think this was one. There were two of them, one for X and one for O. I included it because I like it because it's so small. The total number of game states available in tic-tac-toe is 27,000. And I think there was 750 or so when you reduce them when you remove all the duplicates. So I mean, it's a fairly small game. And as I said, you can describe the optimal game strategy on a piece of paper. The other obvious example for when you can use where you can find an optimal strategy, and where the optimal strategy might pose a problem, is Rochambeau, paper, scissors, rock. So you have two players battling each other, and the optimal strategy, the strategy that will guarantee you that you either tie or win, is to use complete randomness. So you play completely random. The problem with this is that if your opponent is doing that as well, you're going to tie. And the optimal strategy guarantees you that you either tie or win. He cannot find a weakness in your game. If you play this 100,000 times, he will never beat you. But the problem here is that if your opponent has a weakness, you cannot use that, because then you are deviating from the optimal strategy. And then you're opening up the window that you might lose. So let's say that you place him 100,000 times, and he goes for rock every time. With the optimal strategy, you will basically tie. But if you play him 100,000 times, the 100,001st time, what is he going to do? So if you deviate from the optimal strategy, you might be able to use that knowledge. But at the same time, you're opening up yourself to the fact that he has already predicted that you will do that, and you will lose. So you have to decide if you want to go with the optimal strategy, which is going to guarantee you very, very small winnings, or if you're going to go with a strategy that is more aggressive. And when you go with a more aggressive strategy, you open up yourself to the fact that you might lose. So this is a choice. How do you then calculate an optimal strategy for poker? Well, as I said, for tic-tac-toe, it was like 700 something. The really, really serious guys at University of Alberta, they have, by using something they call buckets, that is like simplifying the game, solved this for two-player poker. So in this case, the number of combinations for two-player poker is here. That is the number of paths, the number of, that's how big the game tree is. So they managed to reduce that into something that they actually can calculate and use that to develop an optimal strategy for heads-up poker, two-player poker. Doing it for like 10-player poker, that's going to be seriously, seriously difficult. I found this online, so I'm not really sure if it's actually true or not. But I mean, I used it to give you like an idea of how large the game tree is going to be. The guy who wrote the Python script to actually generate this didn't actually manage to run it all the way to 10 because it took too much time. Oh, sorry. Wrong button. It took so much time to just generate these numbers. This is just to calculate how large the space is. So, sure, two-player poker might be solvable for optimal strategy. 10-player poker isn't. Optimal strategy is going to guarantee that you won't lose money, but we want to win money. So from this perspective, I think we can say that optimal strategy is not the way we're going to go. We need something else. We need a more aggressive strategy, and we need something that we can like solve on a normal computer. And there's actually people who have figured out how to do this. One of the ways is to use Monte Carlo simulations. Monte Carlo simulations is that you simulate the game space, and you have this huge game tree. I'm just going to wait for the chopper to pass. So we have this huge game tree, and there's like no way we're ever going to be able to evaluate the entire tree. What we can do is we can sample it. So we're going to like build a mesh in this huge tree, and we're going to sample points of it. And if it turns out like 99 out of 100 we lose, we ain't going to play. And if we do like, if we win 999 out of 1,000, yeah, sure, we're going to play. But are we guaranteed that we manage to map in all the points? Definitely not. We're going to like sample tiny pieces of it. But that might be all we need. So Monte Carlo simulations builds around a theory that you assign agents and you assign randomly cards to virtual players. So in memory, or in our computer, we replicate the game space. We replicate the current state of the game and the exact number of players, the exact same hole cards, the same community cards, and then we have an agent playing as our opponents. The agents playing as our opponents are, how should I put it? It's extremely important that the agent playing as our opponents play as similarly as possible to the real deal. So if we assign a really crappy poker player as our agent in the game, I mean, he's going to do stupid actions, and the outcome of our simulation is going to be wrong. So what we do is we do something called opponent modeling. We try to build a model from our opponents, so that we have a small computer program or an agent that plays their role in our simulation. And that agent should mimic the characteristics of the real player as close as possible. There are numerous ways to do this. We tried several of them. Statistics, neural networks, expert systems like with different levels, like loose player, tight player, expert player, stupid player, fish. And then we try to like assign these models to the different agents. And then you run the simulations like thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And then you take the mean of that. So if you in each case of the games, you win a lot of money or you lose a lot of money, you base your actions based on that. And then you try different actions. So at this point, I can bet or I can raise. God damn it. So, for instance, if you fold, you know you won't make any money. But what happens if I call? What happens if I bet? And if I bet, I might impact the game in a certain way, and if I call, I impact it in another way. So it's seriously important to get your opponent modeling right. And I believe this is one of the more difficult parts of using simulations. Another thing is that you don't really want to assign cards to the players randomly, because players don't play any cards. So if your simulated agent gets like seriously crappy cards, he's going to fold. But in reality, in many cases, he would never have brought those cards so far into the game anyhow. So to solve that problem, like what cards should I assign to my agent? You can use something called weight tables. And a weight table is basically a model of which cards it is likely that a certain place. You can build a weight table from statistics, for instance. So when we wrote our software, it was a console application. It printed out the weight tables in ASCII because it was easy. I'm sure it's not really all that easy to see here, but it's mirrored. So this is the part we're interested in. This is just a mirror of the same part. You have all the cards at the top and on the left side. And when the game starts, all of the cards are green. So they are all equal weight in the weight table. So this player, and I actually believe this is one of the bots from Poker Academy. I believe this is our bot playing the bots in Poker Academy. Everything is of equal weight. And the red cards here, the red bars, are our whole cards. So we know this player doesn't have our cards. And since this player actually bought into the flop, we believe that this user would have folded a lot of cards that are of no value. So all of these dark areas here, that are cards that this player wouldn't bring to the flop. So I tried to make this little animation here. So what happens here is we get the community cards. So we know that this player can't have the community cards. For obvious reasons, they are on the table, so this player can't have those cards. I'm just going to step through this. I actually tried to make a small animation. I don't think it actually shows here. I think it's too dark. Right, let's walk it through manually. I think it's easier. So we start out here, and I just flip through it. how we actually, at the end here, we reach showdown. Oops, damn it. That would be the right side, yeah. So when we actually reach showdown, there's only a few cards left that our bot thinks that this player has. And they are marked in green here. So, and everything that is in red are either cards that we have or that is on the table. So we can tell for sure that this player doesn't have those cards. And based on the action of this player, we have then re-weighted all of the cards. And in our simulation, we take the cards that are marked higher and assign those to that player and play those out in the simulation to see how that player would react based on the model. The information on which cards to re-weight in the table comes from their actions, and it also comes from the other player's actions. When another player folds, we know that that player, or we can assume that that player had a hand he wasn't satisfied with. So he has just brought, he has just, the cards that he had are no longer in the game. So he took some seriously bad cards and left the table with them. And that is a piece of information that we can use on the other players as well. Since 5 players have just left the table or left the game, they took bad cards with them. So we can lower these cards that we think that other players wouldn't play in this user's weight table as well. The weight tables are, together with the opponent modeling, the 2 major parts of the simulation. So using this, we can actually simulate the entire game. And one of the nice things about the simulation is that it actually takes into account all of the things like pot odds, implied pot odds, reverse implied pot odds, and all of these things that are like highly technical poker stuff. And it brings that into a nice model, and it's going to take that into account when assessing the game. I never really got this thing to work very well, so I think one of the problems that we might have had is that we were overly aggressive in reducing the values in the weight table, but I'm not really sure. This game is a typical example of this. At the end of the game, this user never shows his cards because the other players fold. And when the other players fold, this player wins, and we never get to see the cards. So we very, very seldomly get to validate our model. That's a serious downside. So we skip over the animation. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about, I have about 10 minutes left, is pre-flop strategies. So when we get our 2 first cards, how are we going to play that? In most cases, played by the book. There's like loads and loads and loads of pre-calculated, predefined tables, what to do pre-flop. There's like 1,300 different combinations that can actually show up on a table, and you can just pre-calculate that and have it in a lookup table. Just follow a fixed strategy. I know most people like the Slansky model. I think we use something similar to that. You might want to add a little bit of randomness so that your opponent doesn't profile you too easily. In most cases, I would say like use a very, very simple strategy. Another thing that is really, really important is to choose the right limit. Like, pokerbots don't play no-limit games. You always want to play fixed limit. If you go to the unlimited games, like no-limit games, it's going to wreak havoc. I mean, you're going to lose your money instantly. I would say definitely go for fixed limit. But players play very, very differently at different levels. So the first thought that I had when I had built my expert system was like, oh, let's play money games. Let's just see what happens. So I joined a play money game. I got like, you know, $1,000 in play money. I sat down at the play money table. I started my bot. I watched it for a few minutes. Then I go watch TV or something. I come back like 3 hours later, and it turned out that my bot had crashed after like 2 hours of gameplay. Yeah, don't write your bot in C, by the way. So it had crashed like segmentation fault, but it had made like, before it crashed, it had made like $100,000. And I was like amazed, whoa, who should I call first? Like the Porsche dealer or the boat dealer? I don't know. So I gave it like $100 real, put it at the table, and it lost them instantaneously. It lost like 3 hands, and it was like, boom, gone. Turns out, as I mentioned earlier, I wrote it in C. I had a buffer overflow that made it mix up the community cards with the cards it had on its hand. So it like played like completely randomly, and it made like $100,000 on play money tables. So people are just crazy. So don't go for play money. And the same is basically true for the micro limit tables. So if you play like micro limits, like 1 cent and 2 cents and stuff like that, people are really difficult to model. So when you reach a little bit higher limits, like $2 and $5, they play much more by the book. So it's much easier to model their play, because when you start to reach like real money level, people don't do like crazy stuff. So they stick to their strategy, they stick to playing by the book, they play more predictably. So choosing the right limit is like, yeah, you choose the right limit and stick to it, because different limits have different cultures, or cultures around the table is going to be the same. I mean, if you make your bot play well at that limit, it's going to be bad, because it's going to be a different game at another limit. It's also important to choose the right table. If you have built your poker playing software around the fact that you play on 10 people, a 10 people game, if the table only has 4 people, don't play. And if you sit down at the 10 people table and 6 of them leave, you should leave as well. So stick to the game that you have control over. Stick to the game that you know will work. So choose the right table, choose the right limit. You should also be picky about who you play with. Keep statistics on the players. So if someone keeps taking your money, don't play him. And if you find someone that you keep taking money from, follow him. Sit down at his table. I mean, if you keep losing money at a specific table, just ignore those players. If you keep losing money to a specific guy, don't enter the game when he's there. So, timing your actions. You have a fixed amount of time for taking your action. So your action, you have like, in many cases, like 30 seconds or something like that. You can, of course, use all of those 30 seconds for your simulations, but that is going to look seriously weird. I mean, most players have like predefined actions. They're going to act instantaneously or after a few seconds. So model your timing after how the other players play their game. Don't use the same time. Don't use the full time. Don't always take like 12.2 seconds. Like, randomize how much time you're going to spend thinking, so to speak, so that it doesn't look all that suspicious. Okay, the topic of bluffing. Poker bots, at least that is my experience, don't do well at bluffing. So bluffing is like seriously difficult. If your opponents are bluffing you, that is going to be caught by the weight tables. So that is not a problem. But The problem is that if your PokerBot in the simulations feel that the other players, if the opponent model feels that if you try to bluff them, they're going to fold, then your simulation is going to go like haywire and everything is going to be about bluffing. So you probably want to put some kind of capping on how much bluffing you should do. It is seriously difficult. Software doesn't do it very well. It's hard to model how people are going to react to bluffing. So in my experience, just keep out of that area and try to avoid it. I mean, if you have a good model, you probably shouldn't have to bluff all that much anyhow. So it's not really that big a deal. Once you actually get software that can play at a steady rate and is functional to the level where it actually like breaks even, you're actually making money because of the very simple fact that the casino, the poker side, the house is taking quite large amount of money out of the pot at every time. So breaking even at an online poker game means that you are making money. And this is very, very interesting because when I did this, I got to the level where it could actually keep the money I invested. So I could give it $100, and after a few hours, it still had $100. There's some variation, of course, in poker, as it always is, but it was basically breaking even. And I think like, oh crap. So I went out of the game, and I think like, okay, I'm going to put this then. There's no future in this. Today, there's something called rakeback schemes. So in rakeback schemes, you actually get to keep percentage of what the house makes. And that means that even if you're just barely breaking even, you can get serious money back from the house. So once you have a bot that actually makes, can actually play, make sure to enroll in some like really good rakeback schemes. And then you can also model your bot after that because in some cases the kickbacks are based on how often you see the flop and stuff like that. So that's seriously good as well. I know that I'm running out of time. Testing your software is also very important. I think the best way to test your software and do development is to use Pocket Poker Academy. It's like seriously good. It has an API that allows you to like plug in your bot and play against theirs. There you can like root out like stupid software bugs like buffer overflows and mixing up tables and stuff like that. So it's seriously good. Use it. Develop your bots in it. It's basically a framework for bot development. Use the correct development tools for the job. So separate the different components into different parts. So you have the client integration or interaction parts, probably written in C++ or C or something like that. And then you have like your highly optimized simulations and stuff like that, perhaps also written in C. But the framework that ties it all together should probably be written in some kind of interpreted language, Ruby or Python or something like that, and be built into exchangeable modules so that you can have one module for interacting with Poker Academy, another one for playing on IRC, a third one for playing for real online, and then you can try out different models and different expert systems and stuff like that. Another thing that I found was really, really useful is to be able to store game history so that I can revisit a certain game state and figure out what went wrong. So my bot did something seriously stupid. I have a framework for reiterating back to that game state and see what went wrong. So it might have miscalculated the pot odds or whatever, but I can revisit that state, and I can revisit the weight table and see what did the weight table look at that point in time. If you store statistics in a database, it might be really hard to like get the same statistics at that point. So you might want to store that information that is retrieved from the database in the replay logs, so that you can really revisit the same when it cures the database. It gets the same value, so to speak. I think it's a hard nut to crack, but it's really, really, really good. If you completely run out of options, I mean, you seriously fail as I did, there are some alternatives. There are poker playing software out there that are in software packages. They are not designed to be played online, but if you're smart about it, I think it might be possible to extract those and use them online. So that might be an alternative venue for people like me who kind of like failed at the standard route. All right. Thank you very much.
If you have questions, please come up here to the microphone.
All right, so if you have any questions, please come up to the microphone.
Interesting talk, thank you. So
Thank you.
all you said applies to cash poker, doesn't it? Not tournament.
Yes, exactly. So this is like a 10-people table. It's not tournament play. I guess that was the question.
It's a cash game. It's not a tournament game. Not sit and go.
Not sit and go.
Okay.
No.
Do you try your bot against your own bot?
I'm sorry, could everybody in the room be a little bit quiet? I have a problem hearing the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, please be quiet while going out. Thank you. So my question was, did you try your own bot against your own bot?
Yes, I tried my own bot against my own bot. And I actually tried like different models. So I had like several different iterations of the same bot playing each other, mostly for debugging purposes, because it kind of ran into problems like it had too much statistics in the database, so the database queries were really, really, really slow and stuff like that. So that's the kind of bugs you can iron out by playing yourself.
Hi, I have a question. Okay, so have you tried to get data from data mining software like Poker Tracker or Hold'em Manager to get, let's say, databases of how players play and different tables and stuff like that?
No, not really. I mean, I talked about it and I've read about it, but I've never actually tried it myself. What I did was that at some points, I would just monitor tables for days after days after days to try to build like generic agents that I could use like quickly to drop in case I didn't have any statistics on people.
Okay. Do you plan to release any of your code, or do you do that?
No, not really. It's several years old and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
The reason I say it doesn't work was, well, yeah, of course. I mean, we could say, yeah, it can break even, theoretically, or practically, but it serves no purpose to release the code in that way, so to speak. I mean,
so
it's really not a good showcase.
You think you fail with the math, or you think you fail with the, I mean, you fail with the strategy, you didn't fail with the technical thing, right?
If I'd known exactly where I failed, I would have fixed it, of course. But I think I failed on multiple levels. I failed at the math. I failed at the weight tables, at the opponent modeling. I fixed so many bugs, and yet it kept losing. So I found this fault, and I got, oh, that's it. And I fixed it, and it kept losing anyway. So I think there's like multiple errors in it, probably.
Are you aware of any poker bots that are actually working?
Working as in playing online, or working as in you can...
Working in as playing online and making some money. Not a lot of money, but making money.
I'm sorry, the helicopter disturbed the sound, but I believe... okay, so yeah, Poker Academy, those poker bots are really good, but you can't play online with them. And as far as I know, I do not know anyone personally who has a poker bot playing online, but there are lots of people talking about it. So personally, no.
So you mentioned those poker bots, Poker Academy bot that you played. Why couldn't you just use them to play online? I mean, the logic probably is all there, right? So you
Yeah,
probably just wire that up to your online logic.
That was my alternative strategy, like extract the Pokébots from Poker Academy. That's not really why I was into it. I mean, I saw it as a challenge, as a way to like make a few bucks and for the fun of it. Extracting the Pokébots from Poker Academy would be like a little bit of cheating. I mean, it's not the way I think it's possible to do, but I never actually tried it.
All right, so problem number one that you've stated, you have solved that yourself. And the problem number two, you could just take from the other bots, right? From the Poker Academy bots, I presume.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So you stated two problems, right? The problem number one was to
Interaction with the poker, yeah.
And the problem number two was to actually have the logic to play poker.
Yes.
And problem number one, you solved yourself. You could easily take number two from like the implementations that are there, I presume.
Yeah, you could. I wouldn't use the word easy because it's kind of obfuscated and it's written in Java, and I don't like Java, and you know, things like that. But yeah, solve problem number one. You can probably steal the solution for problem number two.
And have you tried any other poker sites that might, say, check for the certificate? Because you mentioned that you did traffic analysis, which was only possible due to the fact that the software would not check the certificate, right? Have you checked other implementations, whether they check the certificate or not?
We attacked a specific brand of poker software. That poker software was used by multiple poker sites. So they bought the same software and branded it. So we could use it at multiple sites because they used the exact same technology. Everything was the same. It was just like the skinning that was different.
Do you have any idea how many really different poker technologies are out there?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Yep, sure. And you should remember this was like in 2005. They might have learned something since then. I don't know. Probably not.
I think we have time for two more questions. One from the internet. Please go on. Please again.
Repeat the question.
How much money did you make, or how much did you lose?
Right. How much money did I make and how much money did I lose? In euros, I lost perhaps a few hundred euros in all. I mean, I didn't lose all that much money because I'd never actually invested all that much money because it kept losing it. So, all in all, a few hundred euros, I would say, lost. No winnings. Sorry.
Okay, next question from here.
Did you know the checks from the poker site? So I read and I get that they make screenshots, they look for the mouse actions, they look for other software that's run in the background. If you're a normal user, if you use chat or something, and they are, yes, did you know this?
I know that they do a lot of strange things to try to find Pokébots. And when we did this project, we had no problems at all. One of the things that we know is that they monitor the process list, they monitor title bars of programs, and stuff like that. But since we intercepted the traffic between the client and the server, we never had any problems. Perhaps they know we were there and didn't care because we lost money, or they never noticed. I mean, it's hard to know. They say like there's hundreds of millions of poker players out there, so they can't really be monitoring us all. So, but I never had any problems. I know that they are watching for it, so I never took any specific action to avoid it besides like you know, the simple stuff.
Did you try to write a web script so you can get the input from the poker sites and put this input to Poker Academy and simulate their
I think that, yeah.
persons?
The problem with input it into Poker Academy is that Poker Academy want to like randomize the deck itself and stuff like that. So you can't actually like decide how many players and who should fold and stuff like that. I think the best option if you want to use the Pokebots is to like extract them completely. I think that would be your best option if you want to go that route.
So
All right.
So thanks for the questions. We have the time is over. If you have more questions, I think he will be happy if you contact him afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
So 2 more things to mention. Maybe you have heard them before. We will beg you to take your own waste with you and put them into the container in front of the building. And the second one, what's the second one? Yes, use the schedule and rate all the talks you attended. It may be today, but you can also do it next week from home. It will help us to build up the next schedule for the Congress and to get your feeling. So,
all right.
Thanks him and
thank you very much.